and that time begins now.
If Martin Luther King Jr. had used violence to get equal rights for black people instead of being peaceful, the world would not be the way it is today. My statement is violence is not the answer, affirmative. My first point is that you get more stuff being calm than being violent. One example is that the Black Hand wanted to create Greater Serbia, so they had Gavrilo Princip assassinate Franz Ferdinand and his wife, but they got no Greater Serbia, and Gavrilo Princip was arrested. They violently tried to create Greater Serbia, and perhaps if they had tried to create Greater Serbia in a different way, it would exist today. Also, if they hadn't been violent, World War I would not have begun, and that would be great. Another example is that if you're a waiter/waitress, you get a better tip from your customers if you not punch them, kick them, or karate chop them. If you do harm them, then not only will you get no tip, but you will be fired and probably punished in some way for kicking, punching them, karate chopping them. My second point is that hurting people or stealing stuff doesn't really give you what you wanted and will probably get you into trouble. An example is that if you forget to do your homework, punching your teacher will not solve anything and will probably send you to the principal's office, and then you will probably get suspended for at least some amount of time. FBI statistics in 2008 show that 9,800,000 people stole stuff from other people, and most of them were arrested and they didn't get the stuff that they stole. All of those people probably could have gotten those things if they had gotten a job and non-violently saved up money, unless the thing was a one-of-a-kind thing, but they probably could have bought it at an auction or something like that, unless it was a family heirloom. Although, if it was a family heirloom, then they probably wouldn't have really cared enough to steal it, unless it was really, really expensive. My opponent might argue that if Martin Luther King Jr. had used violence to get equal rights for black people, then he could have gotten them faster than he did. That might have happened if he had used violence, but if it did, then the entire civil rights movement would have been very different. Also, Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy would be one of death and destruction rather than peacefully going against the government. To conclude, my statement is violence is not the answer, and it takes less time to do something violently, but if you do something violently, then you will not do it as well. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Alright, so Casey, you are going to have 2 minutes for cross-examination, and it's
If everyone in this room and your family was going to be killed today, and you could save them all by throwing one single punch, would you do it?
Yes.
In sports, you use violence to defeat the other team.
Not in all sports. An example would be ping pong. You don't punch your opponent and then win.
But there are still sports like wrestling where you have to use force to defeat them.
Yes.
Do you agree that people couldn't have been stopped in World War I without violence?
They could have been stopped because World War I wouldn't have been created if they hadn't used violence in the first place. As I said, if Gavrilo Princip hadn't used violence, World War I wouldn't have started.
But Kaiser Wilhelm will still be trying to take over the world, and we would still have to use force to defeat him.
He might not have tried to take over the world, but he might have as well.
There still is the might have that he wanted to take over the world, so we would still have to use force.
We wouldn't have to use force. It would be a possibility, though.
Some people don't listen without threat or force.
Yes, but that's not a lot of people.
I know a lot of people that don't listen without threat or force. Do you agree that sticking up for yourself is important?
Yes, but you don't have to do it violently.
Again, some people don't listen without threat or force.
I know, but you can threaten them using your words, and then you don't follow through and you did it non-violently. But with the threat of violence, what if did not require any actual violence?
Most people want to know that you're actually strong enough to defeat them, and violence is a way to show that.
But another way would be to write something and change everyone's opinion about them, and then they realize that you have more power than they do.
But you still wouldn't have more power if you just...
Casey, you're going to have 3 minutes for your opening statement.
I disagree that violence is not the answer because learning to fight against the problems you face is important to grow and be an independent person. The definition of violence is the physical force of any kind. My resolution is violence is the answer, and I am negative. Malcolm X, an activist, once said, "I don't even call it violence when it's self-defense. I call it intelligence." He wanted to help people, and I believe his saying is the best to defend that violence shouldn't be thought of as a bad thing. It should be thought of a way to stick up for yourself. Bullying in World War I are major ways of sticking up for yourself or your country is very important, and using violence is the main point in that. Bullying, one of the biggest problems in schools and online today. Studies show that nearly 30% of students are victims of bullying, and 160,000 kids stay home from school every day because of a fear of bullying. Now, children are scared and have a fear of bullying, and lots of students don't use self-defense. Instead, they don't go to school and face their problems head-on. Bullying is not just something that you can see from time to time. It is something that you can see everywhere, so you need to defend yourself more than you would think. When I was in elementary school, there was this girl who was bullying me. One day, I kind of just got done with it. She was throwing a bunch of snowballs at my head and laughing. I got done with the hatred and hit her right in the eye. People can just totally push you to a point where you need to fight back and stop getting your feelings hurt. Also in 5th grade, one of my friends was being bullied. This kid was being extremely rude, name-calling, and teasing. He got mad at him for no reason. After a few weeks, he could not take it anymore. Soon he used violence and punched the bully. This bully has never bothered him again. In wars and revolutions, there are tons of times you can see countries or people sticking up for themselves, from countries taking down Germany to the people in France taking down their government. In World War I, Kaiser Wilhelm was trying to take over the world and hoping that his country, Germany, would be the main power source. After a battle, the German army suffered from losing weapons and food. The Allies used this to their advantage, and on August 8, 1918, they began fighting back using violence, and this then came the fall of Germany in World War I. In the French Revolution, the people of France were completely against how their country was treating them, including not getting enough food, disease, and government debt. The people of the country got upset with their government because the royal family flaunted in their wealth. This included the women fighting back and marching down Versailles on October 5th through 6th in 1786, using violence and telling their needs to the king of France. After fighting back and using violence, they got what they needed to survive. My opponent may argue that violence leads to more hatred between societies. There are so many people that need to fight back and get themselves out of our society. Wars, conquest, and bullying all have one thing in common: self-defense. You need to use self-defense to fix it. Protect yourself from something you're scared of, and soon you will not be so scared. I believe that violence is the answer. Thank you. I now stand ready for cross-examination.
Alright, John. You'll have 2 minutes to cross-examine Casey. 2 minutes begin.
Do you think that violence solves all of the world's problems?
I don't think it solves all the world's problems, but I do believe that it solves a lot of them.
You think that not everyone likes violence, right?
No.
So then you think there are no pacifists in the world?
Can you repeat the question?
You think that there are no pacifists in the world today? They don't exist.
Can you explain what a pacifist is?
Somebody who does not like violence.
Well, I do believe there are some people, but again, there's so many people in this world that don't respond without having someone with a higher force against them. So you would need that kind of person.
Okay. Does violence make it better for everyone involved in something?
It could.
So would violence make a funeral better for everyone at the funeral?
Why would there be violence at a funeral?
I don't know. But would it make it better?
It would depend again, because it depends on the situation of the funeral.
Somebody's dead.
It could be a fake death.
Okay. Would you like it if we paid people with violent acts instead of money?
No.
Do you think that the world would be a better place if everyone killed each other to get what they wanted?
Again, I'm not saying that everyone should kill each other. I am saying that violence is a way for you to protect yourself from something you're scared of.
Okay. If violence was the answer to everything, would the world be better than it is now if everything was solved with violence?
Again, I never said violence is the answer to everything. I just believe that it's the answer to something that is very horrible that we need to protect ourselves from.
Okay. Would violence solve...
You have 1 minute to prepare for your closing statement. Time. So please return to the podium. Each have a minute for your closing statement. Johnny will begin with yours and Casey will finish with yours. So Johnny, you have 1 minute beginning.
No matter what time or place you are in, violence is not the best possible answer. It might solve your current problem, but then you have another problem that you wouldn't be able to solve with violence, so it would just create another problem, and then another problem, and then another problem, and then another problem, etc., etc. As it did with Gavrilo Princip and the Black Hand. The only way you can stop the cycle is if you stop being violent. My opponent argued that violence solves the problem of being bullied, but I disagree. You could just get all of your friends to rally with you and just become a large mass, and then you probably won't fight, or he or she probably won't fight you because they'll just know that there are a bunch of people who agree with you that they're being mean. Also, you could just get a teacher, and then the teacher could talk to the bully, and then if they don't stop, they could talk to the parents, and if they still don't stop, they could just get them banned from the school for a while. As many unknown people once said, hugs, not drugs. Thank you.
You have 1 minute for your closing statement, and that's going to begin.
I am violence is not the answer, negative, because the fact of sticking up for yourself and your beliefs is important. Whether it's war or bullying, it is so important to do so. I believe so much in this because of the fact that we can all understand what it's like to hurt and feel that not as powerful as the other person. But when you finally stick up for yourself using violence, there's a way for you and me to feel powerful. My opponent argued that Martin Luther King and everyone in the 1960s movement didn't use any violence, but that is not true. There were still people that fought back using violence. Throughout history, there has been many examples of people whose intentions are to hurt others, and the only way to stop it is using violence. Saying violence is never the answer might make you feel good, but it's wishful thinking in the real world. Thank you.